You've heard the name, right? The Bermuda Triangle. For decades, it's been this place of deep, dark mystery. But what if I told you the real mystery isn't out there in the ocean, but actually inside our own heads? The story of this infamous place is really a perfect storm of genuine danger, a bit of human error, and a fascinating psychological illusion. So, let's dive in.
It all starts with something like this. A simple sentence crackling over the radio. Pure confusion. Disorientation. And then, just silence. This one transmission from the heart of the mystery really sets the stage for everything that followed.
So, where did this whole legend really kick off? Well, the modern myth of the Bermuda Triangle was pretty much forged on a single day, December 5th, 1945. It's the story of an incident that remains its most haunting chapter, the disappearance of Flight 19.
Okay, so picture this, a routine training mission that just spiraled into absolute chaos. You've got 5 bombers, 14 crew members, led by a really experienced pilot. They take off in clear weather, but a couple of hours in, things go wrong. Their compasses, both of them, just fail. The flight leader, a guy named Lieutenant Charles Taylor, gets completely turned around. He becomes convinced they're over the Gulf of Mexico, so he makes a fatal call and tells them to fly east, which takes them even farther out into the open Atlantic just as the weather starts getting really nasty. The crew was confused, the leader was lost, and then nothing.
And just when you thought the story couldn't get any worse, it does. A Mariner search and rescue plane with a 13-person crew was sent out to find the missing bombers. But later that same night, it also just vanished from radar. No trace. In one single evening, 6 aircraft and 27 men were just gone.
You see, Flight 19 wasn't just some isolated incident, at least not in the public's imagination. It became the centerpiece, the poster child for this growing collection of stories. Some of them were real, some maybe a little embellished, that would eventually get all bundled together to create this incredible modern legend. And if you go back even further, decades before Flight 19, there was an even bigger tragedy that fueled this region's scary reputation. The USS Cyclops. This was a massive Navy ship longer than a football field. It vanished without a single trace, with 306 people on board. That was the single largest loss of life in U.S. naval history outside of combat. So alongside these staggering, very real events, you start to get fictional ghost stories like the Ellen Austin circulating. And this is where fact and fiction really start to blur together, creating a powerful, scary narrative. So you've got all these different stories floating around, but the whole thing didn't have a name yet. The final piece of the puzzle really fell into place in 1964. A writer named Vincent Gaddis connected all these separate events under one spooky, very catchy name, the deadly Bermuda Triangle. And just like that, he created a single, unified mystery, where before there had just been a series of unrelated tragedies.
Okay, so once the legend had a name, people's imaginations just ran wild. We're talking aliens, sea monsters, time warps, the whole shebang. But the real answers are actually way more fascinating. And they lie in things like geology, meteorology, and just the basic physics of navigation.
Right. So if it isn't some supernatural curse, what is actually going on in this part of the ocean? What makes it so tough for sailors and pilots, and has for centuries? Well, a major factor is something called the agonic line. See, almost everywhere else on Earth, your compass points to magnetic north, which is a little different from the true geographic North Pole. Navigators know this and they account for it. But on an agonic line, true north and magnetic north line up perfectly. Now for us, with GPS, that's no big deal. But for early navigators like Christopher Columbus, or the pilots of Flight 19 who were relying on older compasses, this could cause huge confusion. And the compass is just one piece of a really dangerous puzzle. This whole region is like a violent battleground of weather. It's a hotbed for hurricanes that can pop up with terrifying speed. Underneath the waves, you have the Gulf Stream, which is like a raging river inside the ocean, so powerful it can carry away any trace of wreckage in just a few hours. And below that, you have these vast, treacherous shallow waters hiding shoals that have been snagging ships for centuries. There's even this wild theory about undersea methane gas eruptions that could, in theory, sink a ship in seconds by basically making the water less dense.
Okay, so we've got real, natural dangers. That makes sense. But that still doesn't explain why this one area feels so uniquely cursed, right? Well, the most powerful force at work in the Bermuda Triangle isn't in the ocean. It's inside our own heads.
Psychologists call it the Bader-Meinhof effect, or the frequency illusion. You know this feeling. It's what happens right after you buy a new car. Suddenly you start seeing that exact same model everywhere. Those cars were always on the road, of course. Your brain just never bothered to notice them before.
This is exactly how the Bermuda Triangle myth works. First, someone tells you the spooky legend. Then your brain, which is basically a pattern-finding machine, subconsciously starts looking for proof. So when a plane goes down near Florida, your brain goes, aha, a hit, the legend is true. But when a plane disappears somewhere else, like Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 in the Indian Ocean, your brain just kind of shrugs. It's a miss. It doesn't fit the pattern, so it gets ignored. We pay special attention to losses inside the triangle, and we forget that tragedies happen in all heavily trafficked parts of the ocean.
So, when we strip away all the myths and the cognitive biases and the spooky stories, what are we actually left with? Let's look at the hard data.
The legend claims this is some uniquely dangerous supernatural place, but the reality is, it's just one of the most heavily trafficked areas for ships and planes in the entire world. And when you have more traffic, plus severe natural hazards like hurricanes, you're just going to have more accidents. It's simple math. When you actually run the numbers, there is no statistical difference in the rate of losses inside the Bermuda Triangle compared to any other busy, storm-prone part of the ocean.
And look, you don't have to take my word for it. This is the official position of the experts. The United States Coast Guard, the people who actually do search and rescue out there, they state very clearly that they do not recognize the Bermuda Triangle as a specific hazard. They say the losses are due to traffic volume and environmental factors, period.
And this number, well, this might be the final nail in the coffin for the myth. In 2013, the World Wildlife Fund did a study to identify the 10 most dangerous shipping waters on the entire planet. The number of times the Bermuda Triangle made that list? 0. Not once.
So ultimately, the Bermuda Triangle isn't a mystery of the ocean, it's a mystery of the human mind. It tells us so much about our love for a good story, our built-in need to see patterns even when they aren't there, and our fascination with the unknown. The real question isn't what's hiding in the sea, but why a really compelling myth is often so much more powerful than a simple truth.